Hey everyone, welcome again to another Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on this stream about building a learning management system with Laravel. We have a very focused session again. I hope we can get to everything that we need to do. I don't know if it's going to go way too long. I'm sure it's going to be less than an hour. So let me show you what we have for today. Basically, we are going to continue adding the details of the course, testing the details of the course. Right now, we just have title and tagline. We are going to quickly go through the description, and I'm going to show you something that happens when you try to test something and it seems like it's passing, but it's not. We'll see that in just a second. And we are also going to introduce instructors, which will force us to do testing not just in the model, on the course model itself, or in the show course component, but also we're going to go and test that our models are properly set. And then we're going to go down the list with episodes and maybe get through total duration, creation date, etc. So we'll go through as many as we can from this list. Let's see. Yeah, let me open the project in VS Code. I think I already have something here. This is way too small, but don't worry about it. So actually, let me exit out of this. Create the branch right away. Actually, let me make this a little bigger. Let's branch out of this. Git checkout, branch, live stream 3, and code. Zoom in. And there we go. All right, so let's go to the test case first, the one that we were running last week. That's show course test. This is where we end up. We just have tagline and title. So always make sure that before you start running any tests, that your all of your tests are passing from the beginning. So let's go ahead and do that. We have 3 tests, one for the routes that is passing, and then one for the show course component, just making sure that it's rendering and that we can show course details. Hey, Luis Alberto, how you doing? Thank you for being here. So glad to see you again. So quickly, let's go and add one more description to this test. Actually, let's add one more assertion to this test to test the description. So I'm going to add one more here. And in this case, I'm going to test the course description. Now, you would expect that this fails because we don't even have a description column in the model. All we have is a tagline and title, right? But watch what happens when we test. It passes. It makes no sense, right? Why would it pass if there is no tagline, there is no description in the model? We don't have a description column in the table. How is this passing? We don't even have a text entry in our info list that we created last week to show the description. So what is happening here? And this is just from my perspective. when you do this, Laravel is going to give you no. So basically description is just no. And when you assert to see text no, PES is telling you, yeah, I can actually see nothing. I can actually see null in the page. So it's actually going to give you a positive result, saying that, are you asking me that I can see nothing in the page? That's correct. I can see that the description, which is null, is properly not displayed on the page. So you might be tempted to say, yeah, that passes, but you have to be careful and understand that passing is not true. It's not an actual passing test. It's a false passing test, because you know that you don't have the code to fulfill the requirements yet. So when this happens, what I do recommend is that you go specific. And by that, I mean, in the course factory, you actually set the state to define the course description. In this case, we're going to say description. And we can use fake. Let's create a fake sentence. And that should be enough. See how this now will fail with the error that we were expecting before. All right, now we have an error. Let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, now it's complaining that the table courses has no column named description, and that's what we expected to see before. And that this happens because now we're going through the factory first, and the factory is going to try and create the record, the course record, with a column that doesn't exist in the migration. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's go to the create courses table migration. Let's add one more column called description. This will be a string column. Run the test again. Now we have a different error. Basically, we still don't have a text entry in our info list to display the course description. Therefore, we don't see it in the page or in the actual rendered component. So to fix this, let's open our show course livewire component. We just have two text entries for now. So let's create a new one. This will be for the course description. And now the test should be passing. So let's run it again, and that's correct. And now I can trust that this is actually a passing test, because now I have all the code necessary to fulfill the requirement. But once we have a test passing, now it's time to rework. And what I like to do is go back to the test. There is nothing to do in the code. I think the code is sufficient for now. But now we can go back to the test case. Go back to the test case and remove the specific state description. So we can go back here and just remove this from the test. And that will actually force me to do something else, because if I do this now and then try to test again, we're going to have a failing test now. Because now the factory is trying to create a course without a description. And the description, since it's not nullable in the table, now it's complaining because there is a not null constraint fail in the course's description column. So now we have to modify the factory itself. So let's open course factory. And let's add one more property here for the description. Again, it's a fake sentence. That's good enough. Save and test again, and now it should be passing. And it is. Perfect. So that takes care of the course description. Real quick, real easy. And now we can move to instructors. And this will allow us to introduce another entity, which we already have, because the course instructors are basically users. I'm going to use the user model to identify not only instructors, but students as well. I'm not going to use any roles in this case. I'm going to probably use just one Boolean column to identify if the user is just an instructor or a student. So that should be enough for now. If that changes in the future, we can go back and change the table definition. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll see you tomorrow. This is always live. You can catch the replay whenever you want. Thank you for showing up, though, knowing that it's late. So let's go and try and test that the course has an instructor. This is still in the course description, by the way. So let's go back to the code. I'm going to close a few things here and go back to here. Now, what I would like to see whenever I create a course is something like this. Not only the description, but I would also like to see the course instructor name. Okay. So that tells me two things. I need to modify the factory to link the course to an instructor via a relationship, and also I need a relationship called instructor in my course. So first, let's go with the factory. Since this is a course belongs to a single instructor, so we can just say for, and we need the factory here, so we're going to use user factory. And here I want to modify the state of the user, because as I mentioned before, when I create a user, I need to make that user an instructor. And what I'm going to do is a custom state function called instructor. This doesn't exist yet, but I'll create it in a few minutes. So basically I'm saying create a user based on a factory, make it an instructor, and then create that in the database. And actually you don't need to use the create method here. You just need to define the factory, and Laravel will understand that you want to create that based on whatever you use for the dependent factory. So I'm creating a course. I'm creating a course for this user, a new user, which is going to be an instructor. And then I want to see the instructor's name rendered on the component. Hello, Aid. How you doing? Thank you for thank you for joining me. I hope you're having a great day. Finally, morning stream. It's not morning here, but I'm glad it's morning for you, and I hope you're having a great morning. So if we go ahead and test this, let's see what errors do we get, so we can start fixing. Okay, first error. Call to undefined method, database factories, user factory, instructor. That makes sense because, as I said, this custom state function doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create it. We're going to open the user factory class, Bon appetit. Let's see. Yeah. In the user factory, as you can see, we already have something similar to what we need, which is this unverified state function, which basically sets a user as an unverified user. So what we need is something similar. So let's create a new public function called instructor. It's going to return static. And then here we can return this state. And the state method takes in a callback function that receives all of the current attributes for the current state attributes for the factory, just in case you need to interact with those attributes in some way. In our case, it's not going to be needed. So I'm going to do something similar to what the unverified function is doing. Let's use a shorthand version. We receive an array of attributes. And then here is where we return what extra state we want to set for this factory. Can we make public static function instead of public function static? The thing is, when you call this function, this public unverified public instructor, they are not static functions, because the way that you would call it is like this. Instead of using when you call factory, that's the static one. But then you already have, from this factory, you already have an instance of a factory, and that's how you can chain the methods that you want. So I think the recommended way, or the way that Laravel does this, and the way that is explained or portrayed in documentation, is make it public and return static. So I'm going to say, what do we use? I think I'm going to go with just is instructor. This is going to be just a Boolean column. That's just a binary column. If it's false, then this is a user. If it's true, then it is an instructor. And I'm going to set that to actually true. Just quickly looking at the definition here, because even though I explained it, hi Bugar, how you doing? Thank you for joining me. Even though I explained it that way, I just wanted to make sure, because the definition of factory, factory state is a static. The factory state is a static property. So we need to return that. We're actually just overriding that, the factory's state property, from this function. So that's why we need to return static. But even though we return static, just to modify the result, just to modify the state of the factory, the function itself needs to be public, because we're chaining it on the factory instance. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we now have an instructor method which should take care of the current error. I'm good, by the way, Bugar. Sorry. Very good, thank you. Did I save? No, I didn't. So run previous. All right, call to undefined. Okay, this is a different error now. Now we need call to undefined method add model scores user. Okay, this is because in the test I'm using for, and this basically, when it tries to create the model using course factory is going to refer to the course model. When I use for, then I'm telling it there should be a relationship for the user model in the course model. And Laravel is going to try to guess that based on the user model name. So it's going to look for a course relationship. Sorry, it's going to look for a user relationship in the course model. But in this case, I want to change that because it makes more sense to create a relationship that is called instructor. So instead of Laravel looking for a relationship called user in course, I'm telling Laravel, look for a relationship that is called instructor, and that is going to be a belongs to relationship. Let's see if the error changes. Okay, it does. Now it's looking for the correct relationship, and that's what I wanted. Now, I could just go into the model and add that relationship and move on. But the correct way is to add a new test for the course model that asserts that the relationship exists. So we're going to do that. First, let's create a new test with test. When it comes to model testing, first I like to put those in the unit folder because we are not testing any application feature. We are just testing the model class in basically in isolation. We are not testing how that model works within the entire application. We just want to test the model itself. Sorry. So within the unit folder, I also like to organize this by folders. So I'm going to put this in a folder called models. And inside models, let's call this course test. And to put this in the unit folder, the default folder or the default location for new test is always the feature folder. But to put this in the unit folder, you just have to use the -- unit flag. And that looks good. That looks good. Okay. Our new class will be located in tests, unit, models, course test. And we already have a few lines of code scaffolded, but instead of test, I always like to use it. For the test definition, let's say it has an instructor relationship. Okay, what do we need here? We need a course, and we also need a course that belongs to an instructor. And then we need to assert that the instructor relationship is of the same class. And also I'm going to make sure that there is an extra assertion that I want to do on the column, just to make sure that not only we have an instructor relationship, the existence of a relationship called instructor, but also that that model, that user model, is correctly set up as an instructor. So basically it kind of looks like what we did here. I do need to create a course like this. So I'm going to copy this and just paste it here. So again, I'm just creating a new course for a new user, which is set as an instructor with the correct relationship name. And then what we can do here is use expect. This is the expectation API from PEST. And we want to expect, and we expect that course instructor, which is the relationship, we expect that to be instance of user class. So all I'm saying is whenever I reference the instructor relationship, the result of that is an instance of the user class. But not only that, I also want to assert that on that instance, the instructor, there should be a property called isInstructor, and that property should be true. And this is one of the many things that I like about the expectation API from PEST, is that whatever you put here, you can then access properties from this relationship or this class, as you can chain those and use those, and then as make assertion on those properties like this. I think that's all I need. Let's run this test only and see how it goes. Class course not found. We forgot to import this model, as in, and when I say we, as it's more like me. Save that, run it again. Okay, this might trip you off the first time you see it, and it certainly did trip me off the first time I got this, because it doesn't make much sense at first, right? Call to a member function connection on no, and that's coming from the data from Illuminate database connection. Why is that the case? How is it that it's failing to resolve a connection on a test when we have had no problem so far in any of the other tests? And it's not so much a problem of the test itself, but it's something related to the configuration, to the PEST configuration. And I'll show you why. If we go to this file inside the tests folder, there is this file called pest.php. This is where we went a few, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, because we needed to configure pest to use this class, the refresh database trait, which allows us to refresh the database every time we run a test. But this is also using or instructing pest to use the base test class. And that base test class, which is here, has the creates application trait, which basically bootstraps all of Laravel's database connection, dependency injection, everything. It just basically bootstraps your whole application so that you can have it available for your tests. But if you notice, this is using these two classes, but only in the feature folder, not the unit folder. And that's what's missing. We need to tell pest not only to use those two classes in the feature folder, but also in the unit folder as well. As soon as you do that and save, when we run the test again, now we have a different error. So just a quick tip, if you ever encounter that error that sometimes may trip you off, that is why it happens. Now we have an error saying that we don't have an instructor function in the course model, which makes sense because the relationship still doesn't exist. Okay, I'm going to close a few things. Test case gone, pest gone. Now we need to go to the course model. Let me close this panel. There we go. Let's open the course model. And let's create that relationship. Public function instructor. This will be a belongs to relationship. And we belong to the user class. But the foreign key, since the relationship is called instructor, I want the foreign key not to be user underscore ID, which will be the default. I want it to be instructor ID instead. Run the test again. Now we have a database problem. The table users has no column named instructor, is instructor. So this is the Boolean column that we added in the factory. Now we need that in the database. So for that, we need to open the create users migration. And let's add that right next to the email verified add column. Let's make a table. I'm going to use a Boolean column. You could use an integer. There's no problem. Or if you want to save in, if you want to use less memory, you can also use a tiny integer instead. Me, since this is actually just a 1 or 0 value, I'm going to use the Boolean type. This is going to be called isInstructor. And for no particular reason, I'm going to make it nullable as well. I could, if I wanted to, I could just set it as 0 by default. But if it's not present, there is going to be a student. If it is present and it's true, it is an instructor. If it is present and it's false, then it's a student as well. So nullable, it makes sense to me. Why not using a role? Because after consideration, since there's just going to be two types of users, either an instructor or a student, then it doesn't, at least in my opinion, it doesn't really make sense to add another table, another entity, just to identify those users, when you can do just that with a single Boolean column. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, we have that column. Now let's go and run the test again. And now the table courses has no column named instructor ID. Makes sense. We have a relationship in the model, but for that relationship to work, we need the foreign ID in the courses table. So let's now open the courses migration. So create courses table. And we need a foreign ID. So let's use table foreign ID for user class, but the column name we decided to be instructor ID. Okay, let's run the test again. Okay. If you have worked with PHP long enough, you know that PHP treats numbers that are basically PHP treats 1 as true. And also a non-empty array is true, a non-empty string would also evaluate to true, etc. So sometimes, or at first, when you see this assertion, failed asserting that 1 is true, you get kind of confused because why is not 1 true? PHP would definitely evaluate 1 to true and 0 to false. But PEST is actually making a strict evaluation, or basically the equivalent of using, hold on, let me go back to the test, course test. Instead of doing 1 equals true, which is actually true, PEST PHP or PEST is actually doing a triple equal sign, which is if it actually takes the type of is instructor, which will be 1 or an integer. It takes into consideration the type of that value when comparing it to true, which is of type Boolean. So if 1, this evaluation will be actually false. So I could just do to be 1 in this case, but I kind of want to access or evaluate that is instructor value to a Boolean instead. Because I'm already defining it as a Boolean in the database, I would like Laravel to treat it as a Boolean itself. So instead of doing that, I can just go to the I can go to the user model and then cast the isInstructor column as a Boolean. We already have a cast array here. Let's add one more, isInstructor, and I want that to be cast as Boolean. And if I'm not mistaken, we run that again. Now we get a passing test. Awesome. And we managed to do that in 40 minutes flat. Perfect. Okay, let's go. Do we need any rework? Any rework for this test? Let me just review. Nothing in the migration. I don't think we need any rework for this one. Worst test. We're not using any magic strings or anything like that. I think now that we managed to test the relationship, we can then step up and go back to the feature test, which triggered the creation of the model test. So let's go back to show course test and test this one more time. And as you remember, the previous error that we had on this feature test was the missing instructor method on the course model. But we have moved past that because we already tested that in the model class. So now we have a different error. Basically, we are not showing the value of the instructor name in the component, which we can easily solve by going to the show course component and adding a new text entry. And to show the value of a relationship in Filament, all you need to use is dot notation. So if you say instructor, which is the relationship name, and then name, this should work as expected. Maybe not. Still not showing. Henry. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, if you type it correctly, it does work. Instructor name. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. Okay, save that. Test it again. And now we have a passing test. Perfect. All right. Let's see if we can cover one more before we end the session. So we have instructor. Perfect. Whatever, I think the duration and episodes I'm going to leave for next week, because that will lead us through another rabbit hole where we need to actually create the episodes entity. So that's going to take a few minutes that we don't have. So instead we can cover the creation. Oh, did I close it? No, here it is. The creation date. Let me close a few things that I don't use. The creation date, that's easy. We already have that column as a timestamp on our model, so we can just add a date entry in the info list. And again, we don't want to cover episodes. We'll leave that for next week. So let's just cover the creation date, show you how you can add formatted dates to your text entries, and let's call it a night. So let's say assert. Actually, let's just copy this one. If I do it like that, actually, let's go specific first, and then we can rework. Because the way that I want the date to show is like this. It'll be, I think, how do you show three? I think it's month, day, and then year. So that should be like, for example, today's December 6th, 2023. So that's the format that I want to show the date as. So instead of the actual format, I should use the date. Again, we're going to rework this. I just want to be extremely specific. so that I know that if the test is not passing, I'm ensuring that the test will fail. And then we can rework that. So for that, we're going to modify the state. Actually, no, we don't need to modify the state because timestamps are updated automatically by Laravel. So we don't really need to do anything here. Whenever we create a new record, the timestamp will have today's date. And if we format that date, it should look like this. So let's run this. Let's see it fail. Fail asserting that all of that contained the date that I wanted to. So since I already know that I have a creation date available, all we need to do, there is no need to modify the factory. All we need to do is make sure that we display that column as we want. So let's go to the course test. No, not the course test, sorry. The show course component class. And let's add one more text entry. This time for the created at column. We are going to modify that or format the output as date with the format month, 3-letter month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year. Run that again. No test found, really? Oh, I didn't do run previous. And I screwed that up. Okay, let's go back here and run it. Let's see. Text entry could not be converted to string. That's interesting. Could not be what happens if I just let's not use date for now. Oh, I see what's happening. Sorry. I was using a dot here. It was very hard to see. I don't know how I caught it at first, but it's basically trying to concatenate a class with a class. You can't concatenate a string. So my bad. Save that and run again. Still failing that the text is not showing. Created ad. Oh yeah, wrong date. It's showing December 7th. I don't know why I thought. Probably because the time zone. Did you know that Laravel uses UTC time zone as a default? We should probably change that. It's showing the December 7th, which is tomorrow. Which makes sense because I'm in Mountain Time or MST, so that's UTC minus 7 hours. But if I take now and add 7 hours, then we're already in tomorrow. So we should change that right away. I don't want that to be confusing later. So if I'm not mistaken, that is in app.php, which is in config, is in the config folder. So config app.php. Let me look for the time zone. There you go. Let's change this to, I believe the time zone for MST is America Denver, I believe. I think so. That takes into consideration daylight savings when you go to America Denver. So if I run that again, now it's giving me something else. Oh, that's the wrong. Is it /? We can just use UTC -7. I have never done that before. You mean that if I do UTC -7, that'll work? Let's try it. That's a new one for me. Run previous. No, it's not valid. Hold on, let me look for that. I always look for that in the PHP documentation. Hold on. So php.com. No, what is this? PHP docs. .net. That will let you know that I haven't been here in a while. So let's look for date. Or was it? No. I always forget where I find, there is a list here somewhere. Hold on, I'll find it. I'll find it. Just give me a second. Supported time zone. There you go. America. Yeah, it's /. Yeah, this is the one. America Denver. Like so. There you go. You got a passing test. Sorry for that distraction. Let's mark that. Creation date. And Yeah, I think this is a good stopping point, because now in the next few tests are going to be related to episodes, which includes another entity. We're going to need another model, another set of relationships, and a bunch of new tests. So I think we can stop here. And as always, if you like this stream, don't forget to leave a like. It's free and it really helps. And subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss the next stream. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.